Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network, a division of the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. The following program broadcast is an original creation by the broadcast entity. Discussion within the following broadcast should be used for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or consultation. Before considering application of any broadcast content in the following program, please consult your healthcare provider. If you feel you are having a medical emergency, please contact your local health services for immediate assistance. MS&Me Media and the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network do not guarantee or warrant the accuracy of information in the broadcast to follow. The Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network provisions broadcast services to program hosts. Information discussed in the broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or goals of the network and are solely those of the show broadcast host. Should you wish to host a broadcast, please visit our website at msmemedia.com and submit a request to become a program host. We thank you for listening to the MS&Me Radio Network. Enjoy the show.
Hi, welcome to this broadcast of Living Wise with MS. I'm your host, Kim Freiling-Reesar. First and always, I'd like to thank MS&Me Radio, along with the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network, for this amazing opportunity and for allowing me to share with all of you. It's an incredible initiative, and I'm so honored to be a part of it. The goal of this show and every Living Wise with MS broadcast is to empower people living with MS to live the best possible lives they can. Living Wise means so many different things, and with each broadcast, I hope to address the various components that make up the big picture of what it means to live the best possible life you can with a chronic illness. Before I get started, you might notice or hear it in my voice, I'm a little under the weather. I was traveling for business last week. I was actually out in Las Vegas, and I was doing pretty well. Being from the East Coast, though, I was fairly jet-lagged, and as you all know, traveling with MS can be kind of all-consuming, and it can kind of hit you. Well, it didn't hit me while I was there, but since I've come back, I'm kind of feeling achy and a little under the weather. But I think it's important that I talk to you and push forward. So just excuse me if I'm a little slow and a little sounding a little froggy. I can hear it myself. If my voice is not froggy enough, it's sounding more froggy today. So, and before I get started, and if you've listened to any of my other broadcasts, I start every show this way. But if you're new, welcome. And this is my little spiel that I give beforehand. I just want to stress to everyone out there how important it is that each of us finds what works best for us. MS is such a variable disease, and it affects us all so differently. That there is similarities to what we experience, but what works for one person may not work for another. So I highly recommend, and I always stress this, that you need to find what works best for you. You need to keep trying things. When you find something that works for you, go with it. If it makes you feel good, if it helps your body, go with it. But just take everything, including what I tell you or what I say, with perspective and a grain of salt. And just truly try to find and discover and focus on what works best for you and only you. I know everyone means well. I mean well. Just trying to share successes with you. But like I've said, what works for one person might not work for another. So on that note, too, I am probably kicking myself right now that I didn't get the flu shot sooner. I'm not sure if that's what I'm fighting off right now, but it definitely feels a little flu-like and not MS related. However, it kind of brings me into the topic of today is, what is MS and what is just your body just getting sick, just having a cold? Is everything MS related? And I have to say that it's not. And I've discovered this throughout my experiences living with MS since 2003. I would say that growing up, I was an athlete. I always push through stuff, or always, and I can look back now and say that I made excuses for things that might have been MS earlier on, but I kind of shrugged off as being something else. So I would say there was a definite shift that before MS, it was always something else. I pulled a muscle, I um, pinched a nerve, I pushed myself too hard that resulted in my body not working correctly. So, like I said, so before that diagnosis, it was anything but MS. And even when I was probably in the denial phase, it was anything but MS. And now I would say that I have a tendency, like I think a lot of us do when you're dealing with a chronic illness, is that everything is MS, that everything that is happening inside my body is caused by MS. And in actuality, we know, and hopefully we know, that that's really not the truth. So it's always good to be aware of everything that's going on inside your body. Um, like right now, dealing with this whatever cold that I'm dealing with that is making me feel achy. But is it related to the MS? Is it exacerbating the MS? The good thing, and I'll go back to my notebook, I'll keep track of it and make note of how I'm feeling. But I think we tend to, and I see a lot of people on social media, we have a tendency to focus only on the chronic illness, only on MS, that we're focused on that one aspect of our health, and we end up ignoring or perhaps not placing as much, importance or emphasis on the other parts that we need to monitor. So we're good about our MS checkups. We're good about getting those MRIs and meeting with our neurologists, but we have to make sure that we're taking care of the other areas of our health as well. And I'm going to share just a tiny personal story that a while back. This was probably just a few years post diagnosis, maybe 5 years in. It was still, I mean, it's a continuous process. This is, I mean, obviously with chronic illness, this is life. This is a constant up and down. So, like I said before I was diagnosed, and even early on, I dismissed any MS symptom that I was experiencing as anything but multiple sclerosis. I was pushing myself too hard. Didn't get enough sleep. I had a bad sinus infection that was causing blurry vision, yada, yada, yada. It can go on like that. So I was making excuses. So now that I've fully embraced and accepted that, obviously I do have multiple sclerosis, as much as I tried to tell my healthcare practitioner that she made a mistake, but apparently I have it. So now I have a tendency to think sometimes that everything is MS related. And I know a lot of you out there are doing something similar because I see your posts, and I hold myself back a little bit from commenting because everything is not MS related. It's not always the case. So we need to really be aware and open to the entire picture of our health. It's always good to make note of it. It's always good to be aware of it and to acknowledge that something's not right or something's not going on, and to check with your healthcare practitioner, of course. But you can make yourself absolutely crazy. You could think, that everything's related to, and I think it's not a healthy thing to think that everything's MS related. MS is not causing all of our issues. And I think once we get out of that mindset and open our minds up to the fact that our health is more than MS, that it's encompassing so much more than MS. We need to be open to the entire picture and make sure we're taking care of everything and not just the MS portion of things. As an example, and I started to say this, and again, I'm going to go back. I'm kind of off the cuff here and dealing with whatever I'm dealing with right now. But so several years back, I was going to share this story. I started to notice my right leg that it was becoming numb, and I had pins and needles, and it persisted for weeks. And I held off contacting my neurologist because again, I guess I'm kind of stubborn sometimes and feeling like, oh, it'll go away. Um, but it didn't, and it persisted. And of course, then I was convinced I was having an exacerbation. I was starting to flare. Um, and I was convinced of it at that point. I contacted my neurologist, and he got me in right away for an MRI to see if I was having activity. And it turns out what I was convinced was MS, the numbness, the pins and needles in my right leg, wasn't MS related at all. I wasn't, to my shock and disbelief, um, I wasn't having a flare. I was actually having my first bout of sciatica, something that I had never experienced before. So once again, that multiple sclerosis played a game with my head, and literally and figuratively speaking. But this time, it was in the opposite direction. So what I thought was MS really wasn't MS. So I thought it was, multiple sclerosis attacking again, and yet it wasn't. So in this case, I think it was really good that I was aggressive and found out if I was dealing with a flare or not. But it did kind of serve as a wake-up call that I've kind of tried to follow ever since then, that there's other things going on inside my body and not just MS. And I realized that maybe I was focusing too much on the MS portion of it and assuming I had the assumption that if I visited my neurologist in the MS clinic, that that was what all I needed to do to maintain my health. I was focused too much on the MS portion, and I didn't even have a general, if you can believe it, I didn't even have a general practitioner at that time. And as we all know, there's other things that could be going on, and there's a lot of people out there with MS who have secondary, and I hate to use this word, but it's what they use, the comorbidities, which I hate. I hate that word. I hate it. Ugh. It just sounds horrible. But we have other conditions. Some people could have MS and diabetes or MS and heart disease. There's, you name it, and you could have multiple things going on at once. So it's kind of a common sense thing. It's kind of yeah, an obvious thing but you kind of sometimes do not see the big picture. So after that, I made sure I was to get a primary care physician, that I got my annual checkups. I also made sure to hook up with a dermatologist, to see a dermatologist once a year for a skin scan. I'm a fair skinned, light um, skinned person, and it tends to run in our family, skin cancer. So made sure that that was taken care of. Made sure to visit my gynecologist yearly to have my annual mammogram and pap smear or whatever needs to happen there. Sorry, that's a little bit TMI. I make sure I go to the dentist every 6 months, the eye doctor. I mean, sometimes it can be overwhelming and a full-time job with all these appointments and doctors. But I decided that monitoring my health and making sure that I'm okay in all of these various areas um, truly is important for my overall health care. And the point being that the body is all connected. And if it's all working at optimal levels or as healthy as it possibly can be, then I figure that can only help me living better and a more full life with multiple sclerosis. And I already have one chronic illness against me, so why wouldn't I take the steps to make sure I'm preventing others from happening? So it's about the total overall picture. And not everything that you're experiencing is being caused by MS. So just be aware and knowledgeable of it. Talk to your healthcare practitioners if you're experiencing anything that seems out of the norm for you. But truly, you can make yourself kind of nuts um, if you're thinking it's all related to MS. Which brings me to my next point. And it's something that I struggle with especially recently. I've never really put this much time and energy into multiple sclerosis. And sometimes I have a hard time separating, or at least, and maybe it's just not a possibility, but finding kind of the balance between my life and an MS. So this might be me working through this because I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. I'm not quite sure what the answer is, if there is an answer. But it just seems that sometimes multiple sclerosis can be all consuming. And that I need a sense of denial or basically a step back from it just in order for me to cope and get through because it's just there's just constant daily reminders. But then I'm also talking to all of you through this radio show. I'm working on livewisems.org, and it's just it seems to be a constant these days. And I've never, like I said before, put this much energy into it. And I'm not sure if it's healthy. You know, I think there needs to be a separation, and I'm really struggling to find that balance if there is one that exists. I was calling it the MS life balance because I do have a life and I enjoy living my life and not thinking so much or focusing so much on the disease. And I think that's helped me to get through. But how do I help others and say y- that it's not all about the MS? Again, I'm going to go back to that this is the topic of today's discussion. It's not all MS all the time, and it doesn't have to be. You need to give yourselves, well, I know I do. I don't know if anyone else does, but you need to give yourself a break from it sometimes and have I've even seen some other I love reading people's blog posts and their what they have to say. And I know I saw one where someone talked about just taking a vacation from MS, that she went away with her husband and they didn't mention it at all for a few days. And I think that that's is healthy, you know, mentally for us, that we can't, it's a constant daily struggle that we need a break and we need to give ourselves a break. So even little mini vacations where you just go away for a few days and you don't even think about it and you don't even mention it. Um, so it's something that I've been struggling with in the past few months. Just how do I separate myself from MS and identify myself as me, as Kim, as who I was, who I am without MS. You know, I'm not a patient with MS. I'm multifaceted, Kim. I love to do so many different things and live my life and be happy. And now you would think I've been living with MS long enough that I would have figured it out by now. But as I mentioned before, I think it's a constant struggle and something that you need to constantly be wary of. You know, the stages of grief that I talked about before, it's probably something that, even though I've come to accept MS, it's a constant struggle and that you constantly are experiencing these different emotions and feelings. And mental health is a big, huge part of staying healthy and living the best life you can with MS. And unfortunately, living with the chronic illness involves constantly changing situations, and we have to keep adapting and adjusting. Um, and I guess the frustrating part for me, and I'm sorry if I'm kind of skipping around here, but it's just I'm frustrated because I want to live my life the way I want to live it, and I don't want to have to consider it, the MS portion of it. But I'm not sure if that's realistic. I don't know if I can detach from MS, and how do you come to that sense of peace with it? You know, I don't feel like I can ever really step away from it, and when I try to, I kind of get sucked back in. Um, because I am passionate about it. Well, I would love to walk away and act like none of it, you know, that it doesn't affect me and have that denial, live in that blissful state of just ignoring. Um, I can't. It's just not realistic. So I can only do my best each and every day. Wake up, try to do my best, and try to find that happy balance where dealing with a chronic illness is that MS is secondary to my life. Um, and I think I have to accept the fact that, when I was diagnosed in 2003, that's I part of my identity I became an MS warrior, and it's part of who I am, and I will continue to fight even, but I'm just voicing my frustration that I see a lot of people out there struggling and really focused on the MS part. Um, but we all just need to remind ourselves and concentrate on the fact that we are so much more than MS. We are so much more, and I think that will help us, not just for the total picture, the giant picture. We're more than a statistic. We're more than a case study. We are our wives and mothers and daughters and friends and sisters and whatever you can think of. We're all over the place, and the list can go on and on and on. So there's no answer to my frustration here. And again, I'm doing a bit of venting and rambling, but I think I'm just trying to figure it all out, just like all of us are. And for lack of a better phrase, it sucks. It sucks living with MS. I know it does. But I have to, and you all have to just find ways to overcome it and to find that happy balance as best as you can, to put MS in the back seat and live the best possible lives you can. I don't know how realistic it is, but we just have to keep trying, um, to give ourselves a bit of distance, to gain a little bit of perspective, and to remind ourselves that we are strong, that it's okay to let it affect us, but we deserve to get a break every now and again, if it's at all possible, to give yourself a break, to unplug a bit, to give some distance from the MS universe if possible. Sometimes it can get rather heavy, and in fact, I see some of the support groups, and I feel bad for anyone newly diagnosed coming in because it's heavy. It's heavy for someone who's lived with it for 14 years. So I can only imagine how it would be for someone newly diagnosed. There's a lot of positive things out of it, a lot of people spreading positive stuff and not letting MS get the best of them. So try to focus on the positives, try to help out when needed, but it's so hard. I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. I don't know, if it's possible. I guess what I'm going to try to do, and what I try to do each and every day, is focus on what I can do and how I feel towards MS, and try to come to some sense of peace with it. To stay focused on my resolve, my fight, and my overall approach to living with a chronic illness. So, in closing, the point to my rambling, if you've listened to me ramble so far, and again, I can't blame the cold that I'm fighting, but I'm gonna blame it a little bit for my flightiness. But the point to all of this is, not as bad. I know it's hard living with a chronic illness and dealing with it daily, but to try not to focus so much on MS. That MS is, while it is the struggle, it's not the cause of all evil in the world. There's not. It's not the reason for every ailment of your body. There's other stuff going on, and we really should try to make it secondary to everything that we're dealing with life. To really enjoy life, to value life, to not take anything for granted. I think that's one thing that we've learned through living with MS, is not to take things for granted. I will try to walk everywhere I possibly can because my legs work. I will try to enjoy sunsets and sunrises and beautiful stars because I can see them clearly right now. And There were times in my past when I couldn't walk. There were times in my past when I couldn't see. So while I can, I'm going to take advantage of it. And I think many people go through life and don't understand the value of that stuff. And so we have the value of that perspective, that valuable perspective. And I value and cherish life, and I appreciate all that I can still do and accomplish. And I think if MS has given us anything, it has given us that. So try to focus on that. Um, and I believe it is true that we don't know our own strength and our own fortitude until we are come to that crossroads. I think I've mentioned this before, we all come to a crossroads where we have to make a decision. Do we let MS define us or do we empower ourselves against it? And I really hope that, like me, you choose the empowerment road. I choose my life, and MS will not overtake my life. MS will try its hardest to take my body and my mind, but I'm really going to fight every step of the way to make sure that it does not take my spirit. And I hope you all feel the same way and choose to stay tough and know that every day that we get up and that we live our lives is a win for all of us. I truly believe, and I've said it before and I'll keep saying it, that we are getting closer and closer to a cure with every breath we take. So as much as I get frustrated with seeing MS affect people in a negative way, I will continue to cheer MS warriors on in their triumphs and listen when they need to vent and just hold on to that hope and that steadfastness for each and every one of us. I know with every fiber of my being that we can all live healthy, fulfilling lives with multiple sclerosis. On that note, I hope you join me for future Living Wise MS broadcasts where hopefully I'm feeling a little bit better and a little bit more focused and maybe a little bit less rambling. You can find me here on MS&Me Radio on Living Wise with MS. I also encourage you to check out the website that I work for called livewisems.org, which is a great resource for MS patients and their caregivers. You can find clinical articles that have patient summaries attached to them that let you know what you need to know about the information. So I think it's great you're getting to read what your healthcare practitioners are reading. It's a really valuable resource, and it's reviewed and approved by the professionals at the International Organization of MS Nurses. And who more can you trust but an MS nurse? They're just absolutely incredible people. You can also find me. I manage the social media accounts for LiveWise MS. We have Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google Plus, and Instagram. So I highly encourage you, if you're on any of those social media sites, to check out LiveWise MS. Again, I hope all of you stay well and that you join me for future broadcasts. Thanks again to MS&Me Radio. And we'll be talking more about living wise with MS, empowering people with MS to live the best possible lives they can. I hope you are all well. I'm going to go drink some more tea and have some more cough medicine and hope that I'm on the mend soon. And we will talk soon. Thank you.